Shopify's point of sale system helps you sell at every stage of your business. Need a fast and secure way to take payments in person? We've got you covered. How about card readers you can rely on anywhere you sell?
Thanks. Have a good one.
Yep, that too. Want one place to manage all your online and in-person sales? That's kind of our thing. Wherever you sell, businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 a month trial at shopify.com/listen. Shopify.com/listen.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything. I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony Nippy Ames. And this is
A Little Bit Culty.
Cults are commonplace now. From fandoms to fads, we're examining them all. We look at what happens when things that seem like a great thing at first go bad.
Every week, we chat with survivors, experts, and whistleblowers for real culty stories told directly by the people who lived through them, because we want you to learn a few things that we've had to learn the hard way.
For example, if you think you're too smart to get sucked into something culty, you might be prime recruitment material, and who knows, you could already be in a cult. If you're not aware of your programming, you're probably being programmed, so keep listening to find out.
We'll talk about all sorts of topics on the show, but be aware, this podcast might contain stories that could be alarming to some of our listeners, so please check our show notes for more detailed descriptions and take care of yourself.
Subscribe to our Patreon for Thursday bonus episodes, Q&A, and all sorts of exclusive content. That's patreon.com/alittlebitculty.
Welcome to Season 7 of A Little Bit Culty.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to my love.
Welcome back to ALBC, everyone. This is part 2 with our interview with Jasmin Faulk.
To hear about her experience living under fundamentalist Islam and her incredible escape, make sure to go back and check out part 1 first.
In part 2, Jasmin will explain how nature and therapy helped her heal after she moved to Wyoming, and how 9/11 influenced her advocacy. Writing her memoir was another big part of her healing process, and she'll tell us what she hopes readers take from it. Jasmin's story is about reclaiming personal agency after being trapped in an oppressive system. Now she uses her voice to help others do the same.
Fair warning, this episode covers divisive issues like DEI and the conflict in the Middle East, but Jasmin believes nuanced conversations and perspectives is an important step in bridging the gaps that divide us. And we agree, so please do stick around for that conversation with us. Again, we understand the impulse to cancel or unfollow, but that would just make us more divided, don't you think? So please, join us, let's have these conversations. Let us know what you think of the episode, and you can also find Jasmin's memoir, The Last Sandstorm, in our show notes. This is part 2 with Jasmin Faulk.
Welcome back to part 2 with Jasmin Faulk.
So where we just left off was fascinating. I'm sure everyone's been on the edge of their seats for 3 days waiting to know what happened. So you get to America, it's 1999. Tell us your healing journey, what kind of therapy have you done? And eventually, when did you put together the cult piece of your story?
And where in America were you?
I love the accent. That's good, Nippy. Okay, so I landed in Wyoming in 1999. At the time, and again, there's so many more details, but at the time, as I was plotting my escape, I met and fell in love with an American man. And nothing about that story felt like it was going to be ever doable. But love is stronger than anything else, I will say that. And so as I was planning my escape, he too decided that he was going to sort of end his contract there and then follow along. And then we decided to might as well just start our lives together there. And Wyoming is where we ended up because he had spent a lot of his adult life in Colorado and loved the area. But Wyoming was just quiet and just seemed like a really peaceful place. And I will say, people often have this image of what Wyoming is. It is not only visually one of the most stunning places in the world, the people are some of the kindest people you'll ever meet. There's none of that agitation that you experience in other areas where they are so focused on the everyday pressures of politics and all of those things. These are just like wonderful people who are living their lives. So that's where I ended up, was Wyoming. And it was the most amazing place to actually just turn off all the noise, all the brainwashing and the pressures and the, just all the messages you receive. That was kind of the perfect place. There was amazing places to go hiking, areas of the desert, areas of the mountains. And so spending a lot of time in nature was one of the first things. The other thing is, of course, jumping into actual therapy, psychotherapy, and really working through that with conversation and EMDR and things like that. And then really just starting to jump into doing, finally, at age 25, all the things I loved and was curious about. Things like, going to college, learning how to drive, skiing, just doing things that you never thought you could, or that were, and these are normal things, by the way. These are walking into a space on my own without a male guardian and saying, I'd like to do this, or I'm signing up for that. Those were little things that just felt so empowering, especially for someone that came from a space that had absolutely no autonomy. So those were the first steps. Again, being surrounded by a wonderful community, having children, that was probably the most healing thing, is now you have this life that you are so committed to and so devoted to that you want to make sure that you're protecting their heart from any of the traumas that you may have experienced. So the journey begins that you then take care of the child within you the same way you're taking care of your child. So those were some of the first steps. And through that, you easily, now I will say there was still a lot of shame, and I did not necessarily want people to know where I came from. I didn't want them to ask me questions. I'm lucky because of my dual origin. I could very easily lean into my Italian side, and, I'm usually I'm Italian, and that went well. But, sometimes it just feels weird if you leave a little piece out. But then when 9/11 happened, that's when people definitely leaned into that part of who I was and wanting to know more, just like we're seeing now with the whole Middle Eastern situation. People have not invested or known anything about that region, and now all of a sudden they're scrambling to understand it better. And I appreciate when they go to the sources. It's like, okay, well, tell me directly from the source what it is, instead of trusting whatever crap they're hearing. So they did come to me directly and ask me. And so in smaller spaces, I felt obliged to address some of those questions and answer some of those. And like, for example, I'll give you an example. One of the things when people immediately then equated Saddam Hussein in Iraq with Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, and the government of this country did that. And I, little lady me who came from Saudi Arabia, was like, that is absolutely not the case. That is impossible. If you don't have historic, political, and regional context, you don't know that. But Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden couldn't have been more polar opposites. Their ideologies were extremely on the other side. They absolutely despised each other because, besides the power, but even on a religious standpoint, Osama bin Laden fundamentally criticized Saddam Hussein because he was a hypocrite and corrupt and drank and all that. So there was nothing that bound them, and yet the entire world erupted in war because of this notion that they were in cahoots. So again, maybe they were. Obviously now we know for sure that they weren't, but those were the little things where someone like me could not talk about out in public because, you put yourself at risk. So the healing had to be very, very personal, very surface, and very, very, very slow, very, very slow.
And when did you make the cult connection? When was that?
Well, the cult connection, I think in my head, I always knew there was something very culty about it, for lack of a better word. I may have not used the exact word, but then I think so growing up, I always had curiosity about, is God real? What is God? What is religion? Why are we forced to follow these rules? Why are we forced to follow these rules when other parts of the world follow other rules? Now, my mom's family is Roman Catholic and fairly devout. I had aunts who were nuns. So I was exposed to both of those extreme belief systems and devotions. Didn't have a choice. I was told I was Muslim. I couldn't say, well, what if I want to be Catholic? That wasn't a choice. But culturally, we were half Catholic. And so I would see how different these practices were. And so I had these curiosities around it. So when I finally was away from all of it, now I could really deepen my study into theology and understanding religions and what the idea was and the reason was. And is it true that if you don't believe in a religion, you end up in hell, like you're told? Is it true that without a religion, you are a worthless soul? All of those things really became kind of my hyperfixation. And in studying all that and in deepening my studies and seeing the similarities of control and mind control and ritualistic control, and theoretically they were essentially all saying the same thing, it was like a pretty big aha moment, because then I tied it to other belief systems that I was exposed to growing up that were not religious in the context of religion, but they were beliefs like, my mom was a New Age mom secretly. And again, it's the secret piece that tells you something's off. So I grew up, the Louise Hay book, You Can Heal Your Life, was my Bible, so to speak.
Loved that book. Mm-hmm.
Love that book. And I still do. But a lot of those philosophies, it was like, okay, there's amazing things here. Until it stops in a philosophy of self-growth, that's great. But the moment then it splinters into all of these other beliefs that then turn into cults, and we see it through Ramtha and NXIVM and so on and so forth, even Scientology, I mean, that's where it started, right? Is these beliefs...
That's OG, yeah.
Yeah, the OG, absolutely. And my mom had L. Ron Hubbard's book, she never became a Scientologist, but like all of those books, I remember seeing those growing up and realizing, wait a minute, these are all essentially saying the same thing, which is we have the right answer. If you follow it, all is well. If you don't, you are doomed. And that's when it clicked. It was like, the religion is nothing but that. It's literally nothing but a very seasoned, well-established, deeply rooted form of cult.
Do you think there's any religion that could get it right? Do you think it has the potential to without that? I think they start that way.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I think they start that way. And I think some people stay in that space where that religion can still be a good thing and a good... I am not anti-religion. I personally, it's not for me. But so this is what I use as the example when I talk about religion. When people challenge that notion of religion or accuse me of being anti-religion, I am absolutely not anti-religion. What I say always is every religion believes that they have the right answer. And they literally tell you without, Jesus as your Lord and Savior or Muhammad or whatever it is, you will not go to heaven. My answer is always this. When someone says that, it is literally like saying, if you don't have a college degree, you don't deserve a job. But many people deserve jobs without a college degree because not everyone has a path to college. Right. Not everyone chooses college. And yet you're saying that the only way you will go to heaven is if you believe in that religion. So it's like saying without a college degree, you can't have a job. I find that really...
And there's thousands of you that are saying that.
Yeah,
exactly.
It is hard to believe. Wrong. It is hard to believe when you lay it out that way. And also but who said, and how do we know that they said that? Do you know what I mean? And this is actually something we got from a guest, Jessica Willis Fisher, who wrote the book Unspeakable. And she was a wonderful interview. And we saw her recently in Nashville. And I was sharing where we're sort of at with the book and struggling to but what is a cult? And how can we lay it out for young people? And she's like, what I've been saying recently is if you want to believe whatever you want to believe, whether it's about your diet or about God or whatever, this is a good way to know if it's a cult or not, or unhealthy. You don't even have to use the word cult. If you believe it and you teach your kids that and your kids decide to not do that thing or believe that thing, are they still welcome in your home? Do you still love them?
Beautiful.
And if the answer is no, then that's a cult. Or
well, if I don't want my kids to eat sugar.
But you'll still love them if they don't eat sugar.
It's getting to the point.
but even diets, but diets become a cult. I was vegan for a while, and I was like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore because now I'm associated with these crazy people who are vegan.
We
seriously,
did an episode on it. Yeah.
Yes,
we'll send that to you.
Please do. Homeschooling. I homeschooled my kids, but not because I'm religious. Also, not because I'm a fanatic unschooler that doesn't believe in any form of order. That's an anarchist. So you immediately get associated.
So you get lumped in.
Yeah.
Immediately. So I always say I'm literally allergic to labels, and I am. I'm genuinely allergic to labels because they're all constructs that we've made up.
How did you feel during COVID? When people, you're either anti-vaxxer or vaxxer, those labels.
Oh my gosh, there's that. Okay.
We wore, total transparency, we wore every one of those labels at one point, didn't we?
Well, everyone, but how did you manage that period?
So I believe in science, but I also believe in a lot of natural ways of being with the world.
Same.
It's a balance between those two things. I wore the mask and I was happy to wear the mask because I knew that it could protect other people. At the same time, I didn't think that it had to be a Nazi implementation. Because some people were wearing 5 masks and they would stare at you if you had only one on. So there was that. I did not vaccinate my kids every vaccine in the first 2 years of their lives. I have vaccinated them, but I scaffolded that vaccination because I believe that some of these things, I do not want them having these diseases. I want to protect my kids. There's enough stories and history and documentation and data around that particular vaccine that I felt it was safe. So I am not an anti-vaxxer, but I'm not a vax them all in one lump sitting in the first 6 months of their lives, right? So those were tough
That's
times
reasonable.
because, yes, exactly.
Very
Reasonable. Yeah, exactly. And again, if you want to do that, go for it. I have no problem with that. I'm a true live and let live kind of person. So COVID was tough because I live in one of the most liberal progressive parts of the world. And while my ideology aligns with it, I get very turned off when I see that it becomes, again, that form of cult mentality. If we're not all doing this at the same time, shun them, cancel them out. And what to me was the worst part of COVID was not just the vaccines and the masks. It was the isolation from everything and diving into your own belief system and then coming out the other side completely brainwashed into whatever it is that you essentially believed or kind of was into to start with. And we see it on all the political and social ways.
Everywhere. Oh, that was such a good little rant. I love that.
I had a lot of thoughts during that.
So what role does reclaiming personal agency play in overcoming oppressive systems, whether they're cultural, religious, or cultic, and how have you helped others find that strength?
Oh, wow. Well, it all boils down to that, but we never think about it. So I love that you worded it because it really forces us to think about it. I think our own reclaiming and the agency of reclaiming that can only happen if we are feeling safe. If we're not feeling safe, then it's really hard to get to that point. Sometimes it does take nudging from someone else or the assurance that someone else is there to provide that for you. I will say I do get a lot of private messages and questions from women who are in very similar situations as I was. And I can tell right away if they're ready or not to make the first move or the big move. And I think without that, unless that readiness is there, it's really hard to push forward to completely reclaim or to take that control back. I think that's the number one thing. If that's not there or that's not quite ready or it's not marinated, I think it's really, really dangerous to force it or to push it because it will
You mean
collapse.
they're still clinging to the ideology?
Yeah, because what happens is it's like an addiction.
It's scary to leave it.
Exactly. It's like an addiction. You can force someone to stop using drugs or whatever, but they will go back to it unless they have made that connection themselves. Like everything in life, if you have not made the connection that this is no longer serving you or actually harmful for you, you cannot fully recover or heal from it.
So true. I have this family members where I'm just like, this is impenetrable.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, my question. All right. So you studied radical ideologies. Are there specific patterns or red flags you've identified in how oppressive cultural systems or extremist groups recruit and retain members, similar to what we see in cults?
Yes. So I will say the first thing that they do is immediately finding your weakness and telling you they can fix it and they can help you with it. That's the first one. It's the minute they see that weakness, whatever that weakness is, it's like, we have the remedy for it. Immediately. So they play upon your weaknesses and your fears, which a weakness is usually a fear, right?
Yeah.
So the minute they realize what your fear is, what your weakness is, there are these romantically beautiful promises that will be fixed for sure, no matter what. And nothing is more appealing than someone that's desperate to fix something that is so painful or scary. So that I will say is across the board, there's not one ideology that does not do that. That's the first thing. And so I now, when I see something that is appealing to me that says, oh, it'll fix, whatever issue, let's say a blemish I'm having, or even if it's something just like as tiny as that, I'm like, oh, that looks too good to be true. If that fixes it like this with one application, I'm like, okay, that's a little cult medication, because it's like the moment you make me this big promise, if I don't have to work for it, or if I don't have to can't think through it or challenge it or question it or have any kind of doubt around it, then it probably is the first step into the fishing into that ideology.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be the hook. You have to have a fear, and living in a human body, everyone has a fear.
That's actually the first
It's
chapter
one- yeah.
of the template of our book. We call it the hook, but the hook is based on answering is based on the susceptibility or the fear.
But the fears are stoked constantly.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, you have different relationships with your fear throughout your life.
Yeah,
sometimes
you're afraid of different
it's
things.
up more, sometimes it's down, and then someone's just going to get it at that moment when it's up and have you interested in something that you normally wouldn't be at a certain time, and knowing what they are.
Speaking of which, we live in very politically and culturally divided times.
Do we? I didn't notice.
How do we deconstruct extreme beliefs and culty thinking to build bridges between people?
And I have a question about that after.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I will say it's not easy because I am on the receiving end of it all the time. I consider myself someone that is absolutely not a threat to any ideology because I am more than happy to hear you out, to have a conversation with you. Even if I don't agree with you, I completely believe in your right to exist within that belief.
Great.
And even with that, if I'm not taking your side exclusively, I am still a threat to you. So as someone who has always believed in everyone's liberty to exercise and be who they are, as long as they're not causing harm to anyone else, I don't see an issue with you having your belief system. Whatever it is, no matter how radical it is, go for it. As long as you are agreeing to stay within your own space and not invade other people's space. What has happened in recent time is the minute you say, that's great, I believe in your right to exist, and I also believe in a lot of the things you believe in. However, this is where I feel like your bubble is crossing over to my bubble, and now we have a problem and we need to talk about it. Not because I'm saying, now that you've crossed my bubble, you no longer have the right to exist, and so I'm going to pop your bubble. What I'm saying is, just take it easy. Give me my space, take your space. Let's just be respectful of each other's space. That is not what ends up happening. What ends up happening the moment you voice that is now they're feeling under threat, under attack. And so the retaliation is to then try to pop your bubble and to really be aggressive about it. And the hardest thing is that it immediately goes from, I'm oppressed and I feel like I'm, the vulnerable one. And my place in this world is to believe that I have to stand by all oppressed voices. Bullshit. That is not true. Because the minute I'm telling you I'm coming from my oppressed voice and I'm telling you this is how your loud voice is making me feel, now you're telling me to shut up and that I'm not worth it and I'm an anti whatever you are. So that is, I think, the biggest problem. So you're asking me, how do we reverse that? How do we work around? I say to continue to do what we do. Well, for me, it's to continue to have the conversation. And I can't even tell you how much in the line of fire I've been recently. And I will say, you know what? I hear what you're saying. Thank you for expressing it. I applaud your courage to tell me to my face, this is how you feel. And I'm happy to continue the dialogue. I will never insult, humiliate, accuse, attack, retaliate, and defend myself in an aggressive way. I will say, I'm standing firm in my position because I haven't felt heard by you. And I will continue to say it until I feel heard. And I'm happy to continue dialoguing on this.
Good for you. I'm not there.
I will say it's not easy. I think being a parent of 3 boys who were teenagers at one point has really helped, learning that sometimes that heat does not take you. And especially as an Italian, I really just want to jump in there and be very aggressive.
That's amazing growth right there.
Maybe I feel like you just need to shadow Jasmin for a little bit in some of these conversations.
I lived in Italy. They don't muzzle their emotions.
No,
they
not
let
at all.
it out. So it's pretty impressive that she's been.
I want to be able to have these conversations, and I feel like they get so heated.
Well, here I'll say too. A lot of them aren't happening in person.
Yeah, they're on.
That's true.
A lot of
true.
And I think that's a huge disservice to how robust the conversations can be, because if I'm feeling you and I'm having a human connection to you and I see maybe that I said something a little bit firm, I can pivot to that in real time. I can even apologize for it, because the objective isn't to win an argument, it's to move the ball forward. And oftentimes people just want to win an argument. And if you're not having these conversations in person, that's why we want to move our podcast to more in person, because I just think you miss stuff. So anyway, that's kind of a big part of it that I think people aren't talking about as much.
I couldn't agree more. I think the face-to-face is really powerful.
Yeah.
This podcast wouldn't even exist without our amazing, supportive, generous patrons. Come find us on Patreon. We are at patreon.com/littlebitculty. Go there for bonus episodes, live Q&As with past guests, exclusive content, and lots of other goodies. Subscribe now and help us keep this podcast going. That's patreon.com/littlebitculty. And now, a brief message from our Little Bit Culty sponsors. And remember, when you support our sponsors, you're supporting this podcast. You've heard from our sponsors. Now let's get back to a Little Bit Culty, shall we? I just think it's so important, especially since COVID, where people became more isolated and the echo chambers became more fortified and extreme. People got scared. And
What
so
I just said gets exasperated.
Yeah, people get hunkered down in their belief system and people other each other. And next thing you know, and labeling each other. And I feel like it's just gotten worse and worse. And I know that's something that we've really struggled with, especially on this podcast, because we want to be able to look at extreme beliefs. And yet, if we kind of go into one or the other, we get labeled things.
Well, case in point, the email you...
Which one?
There was someone emailed you because you said something about, I don't watch Fox News or CNN, and they came at you for...
Wow.
Well, they didn't even come at me. They just said...
They said you haven't been deprogrammed clearly. Well, that's coming at you, if you ask me.
It was something like, I just said I don't trust legacy media, both sides, CNN or Fox. And
yeah, I agree.
And the person said, well, only Fox there's only evidence of Fox lying. And I was like, well, a quick Google search can debunk that. But it was more just that she was saying, and she'll probably listen to this, and I'm not mad at you, person who said this. It just brought something up to me that, in my opinion, that person is still in us versus them. If they think that only Fox is a problem.
It's not even the content.
Yeah,
it's not allowing your opinion to permeate and feeling emboldened to write you and tell you that you haven't been deprogrammed yet.
Yeah.
Not cool.
Here's the thing. Either I haven't been deprogrammed or she hasn't been deprogrammed.
Right.
And, we don't know yet. Well, I think I know and she thinks she knows. So then how do you... And this is somebody who's actually on our Patreon, so hopefully we'll continue to have a civil discourse about it. And that's what I hope. But I just felt my back go up. And I don't want that. I want to be able to have...
Also, I don't think she'd say that to you in person.
Maybe she wouldn't have. I mean, our Patreon is much more like our most devoted audience. We get much less pokey feedback there. The pokey feedback
It's a warm audience.
It's a warm audience is my point. So if someone in our warm audience is telling me that me saying I don't trust the media is a sign of culty thinking, which also, by the way, it can be true, right? Like a lot of people in cults don't trust the media.
Well, I'd like to say this. I'd like to say that no matter how much we think we will be 100% as an individual ridden of any culty ideology, we're already in a cult. Because it's just like when people say they're atheists, which means they don't believe in anything. No, you do. You believe in nothing. This is already a belief system. So does it mean that we're striving to 100% deconstruct any belief system in us? No. Some beliefs are good. That's what keeps us alive.
Right.
That's what keeps us going. That's what keeps us pushing to better ourselves and to have more success. So it's the measurement, number one, that we need to be thinking about. And number two, is it harming other people in the process while we're doing it? So to constantly be calling people out for someone like you that is very vocal about your experience, now all of a sudden you're expected to be the godmother of everything that is anti that one thing. And so anything they can attach to it becomes an opportunity and an excuse. And that's no way to exist in the world or to relate. And again, that's just noise. And I'm not being disrespectful to the message you received. I'm sure it came from a good place. But to make the assumption that, first of all, that you're not entitled to state an opinion is number one. That's a problem. And to use that against you, to turn it around and to say everything you're trying to do, you're not because of this one thing you said, number one. Number two, I watch CNN way more than I watched any other news, and CNN is extremely biased. And I am, and I believe, in half the things they say, or more than half, or I agree with them, I should say, not believe. But it's still very, very biased. So if you can't call the bias within, you've already failed the mission.
That's a good way to
say it lightly.
Yeah. You wrote a beautiful memoir.
Thank you.
What was the impetus? And you did touch on that earlier about why you wanted to speak now. What's going on in society and for you personally, that caused you to put your story out there like this?
So number one, as I mentioned in the previous episode, that the goal of documenting history and pretending that those voices did not exist and don't deserve to be heard is number one, and i.e. the voices of women, especially growing up during a time, we're talking about a 3-decade span of that generation, Gen X, and we know how cool we are, but we have experienced a lot of things where that bridge that had transformed the generations from one to the other. And I think we are seen as so resilient that we'll just get through it. We'll just be able to recover or snap back or whatever. But without actually documenting that piece of history, it's really impossible to move forward. And as Nippy, you said, you will repeat it over and over again. So that was the first reason why I wrote it. The second is because even though my story is completely unique in its nuances, it's not uncommon. It's the same old story. We can all relate to it from whatever walk of life we've had, which is being either oppressed for some reason or the other, whether it's ideological, physical. And so how do we find the strength and the resilience to believe in ourselves that there is always a path forward? It may not be the same for everybody, but that sense of belief that if you have a voice in the back of your mind, listen to it and trust it. So hopefully being able to relate to others in that way. And thirdly, because I do think that as women, as, people from multiple cultures, and when I say cultures, I'm not just talking about geographic culture, I'm talking about the culture of belief systems, whether it's religious, whether it's lifestyle, whatever it is, those are all cultures. People who come from versed cultures that are very aware of those cultures, and especially women, we do not trust that our story is its own version, but at the same time, those other versions exist and they should have permission to exist. And we should learn about them instead of assuming that we are the only victim in the story. And so the culmination of those three things is very, very alive and well in the work that I do. It makes it challenging at times because it is work that is very, very now sort of hijacked by belief systems. It's the new religion. It's the new cult. And so, but the book was written as a foundation for me to continue to have these conversations, which are not easy, but I think giving some credibility that I come from this, I've lived this, I can actually address this and talk about this is the hope. And it's provided that.
And how has that affected the work you do now? Can you tell us a little bit about it and tell us more about the hijacking?
Yeah. So I will say the work that I do is really challenging for two reasons. Number one, I do work in the world of DEI or diversity or equity or multiculturalism, however it's labeled wherever you are. And one of the issues that I face all the time is credibility to my story or not only my story, but my entitlement to be in the space that I'm in and to say the things I am is always diminished by the fact that I speak with this accent, that I speak English like a native fairly, that no one detects that I actually grew up in the space that now we see as this victim part of the world, the Middle East, Arab women, the accent, the religion, the hijab, all of that. I do not show up representing that in the way that the media has now been attached to. So the minute I speak, they're like, well, yeah, I mean, you may be Arab, but like you grew up here. No, I did not. I lived there until I was 25. I actually formed as a woman in that culture, in the most extremist one in the world. I'm trying to tell you, listen to me, and you're discounting it because I look like a very Western, modern, strong woman. So that's number one.
They place you in a box. Based on your appearance. Okay, go on. Okay, I get it. Okay.
Based on my appearance, based on the way I speak, based on,
Which to me advertises that they're going to have a hard time understanding diverse perspectives.
Yeah, well, also isn't that the epitome of racism?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the second thing. It's like, so now you have not only decided that the only way to be a version of what you think I'm supposed to be is this meek or uneducated or barely communicative version. And you're trying to defend that. Oh, I see. You're trying to play better than, greater than, savior, whatever you want to call it. There's lots of labels for it. So now you've discounted me and my authentic experience by displaying this extreme prejudice way of viewing the people that I actually come from. So that is the first thing. And it's extremely concerning because it's spreading like wildfire.
Well, it's hard to put trust in people who claim to have a moral authority, and when your first interaction with them demonstrates that they don't understand the morality that they're hustling.
Or pretending to champion.
Yeah. And they have no immediate and direct association to the supposed cause that they're talking about. So that is really, really concerning to me.
We know.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Can you just, like, for people who maybe aren't in the world or don't know much about it, like, I've heard you say in other interviews that what DEI is supposed to be is wonderful. To include
for
people
sure.
And to deal with our systemic racism and to make sure that everyone is treated equally. Those are great things. Obvious. Like, that seems kind of obvious. But then what happened?
So the foundation of DEI actually came to protect, first of all, gender equality, women. Second of all, people with disabilities, low income, and people of marginalized communities, which we know tend to be people of color. So it did not come to say we're here to address race. It said we're here to address marginalized
interesting.
communities, which naturally we know historically fall. So when they accuse DEI for playing segregation or racism, that couldn't be further from the truth. If you are addressing the other issues, naturally many of those people who will be under the assistance of DEI are also white, because we have poor people who are white.
Yeah.
We have women who are white. We have people with disabilities who are white. So it's not a game of race. It's a game of historic barriers that have been put in place. Do we know about redlining? Absolutely. Do we know that there have been segregations based on race? Of course. So those things are covered. Now, while it stayed in that space, it was fantastic. And by the way, DEI is a modern label. It's a new label.
Right.
This kind of work has existed for decades. And it exists, by the way, in the rest of the world. I did this work when I was in Saudi Arabia and worked in a bank, in one of the biggest banks in Saudi Arabia, in the women's section. I focused on making sure that women's voices and their empowerment was in space. So I was already doing the gender approach of this work early on. And so when it slowly started to transfer into, well, okay, now let's go down the list of all the people who feel marginalized and all the people who need to have some extra attention to make sure that we're providing equity. Okay, concept-wise, that is totally fine. But when then it becomes, but who is the favored in this game of victimhood? Who deserves to be the most coddled? And then if you coddle one, but then it impacts the other, which one has more of an impact? So if now we're taking care of, let's use as the example, let's just go there, LGBTQ and the people who fall under the category of LGBTQ and gender and all of that stuff. Great. Do they deserve protections? Absolutely. Do they deserve their rights? Without a doubt, without a question. All is well until we say some of these measures you're asking for or some of these spaces you're infringing upon may cause harm to another group that was vulnerable to begin with, who already had issues historically. And now we are needing to take that into consideration. And you're saying, no, fuck you. This is more important. This is where we have a problem. And that's why DEI became cannibalized and hijacked within its own space, because it became literally the game. What is it?
The Trauma Olympics.
Well, it became, what is it? Hunger Games. It's like literally the Hunger Games. And it's crazy because everyone that's in this space deserves love and attention, deserves extra measure, deserves the care. Like in the Hunger Games, they're all children that are being pinned against each other. But at the end of the day, if you're not working together or you're not taking into consideration, that will collapse. And that is exactly what the right did. They completely saw the flaws in how DEI was, in what direction it was moving. And of course, they pounced on that and they're winning, you know, rightfully, I may add. And I don't agree with anything they do or say in that respect, but I don't blame them for taking advantage of attacking something that is, it's a ship that's going down.
The problem with the right and how they do it is they do it as a blunt instrument and not through civil discourse.
Absolutely. Yes. 100%.
They go in and then they go, you're this, and they're just brazen. And they're actually doing a lot of the insensitive behaviors that DEI seeks to remedy, but DEI is not in a position where it's solid enough in itself
Exactly.
to speak truth to power. And that's the problem. We don't have a strong Democratic Party right now, and our country needs one badly.
Yep. Absolutely.
And it starts with this kind of behavior, this victim-perpetrator mentality, this trauma Olympics thing. You start eating each other, and it becomes
cannibalizing itself.
It's sad to watch.
It is sad to watch. And the biggest issue is these extremist ideologies exist on both sides.
Of
but
course,
either side believes that they are not extremists. They're just themselves. When I speak against some of the extremist practices that I grew up in, I am not saying all of Islam is bad, and I'm not saying all of Arabs are bad. Nothing farther from the truth from me saying that. What I'm saying is, in the larger umbrella of normalcy, of niceness, of good, of positive, there are extreme pockets that have a lot of power and control. They could be even the minority, but they do have a lot of power and control. We need to call it out. That's what I'm asking the DEI world of extremism, or the different gender ideology, or the different religious spaces, or whatever that label is. If you cannot call out the extremists in your own community, we're going down and we're going down fast. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't mean that you can't say, I love who I am. I love my community. I love what we stand for. And we got to be careful.
You nailed it.
That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. You know, we've had some DMs and people write us saying you need to do an episode on the cult of DEI. And I've reached out to some people that I have friends in academia just kicking the tires on it. And I wasn't ambitious to do it. Let's put it that way, because I'm not sure, and it's controversial yet. Sarah and I had an experience in our own personal life, you know, after October 7th, where the DEI department at a school that we're affiliated with just demonstrated that it wasn't representing what it was flexing. And a real world event happened that stress tests the merit of a DEI department, and it failed to deliver in kind of how you think a DEI department might respond to an event like that. Now, maybe it was an oversight, but it's a pretty big oversight. And come to find out through the Jewish community at our school, one person told me that Jews aren't really part of DEI because they're not marginalized enough, was kind of the take on it. And I'm not Jewish. My wife's Jewish, and I got 2 kids. And to me, that was, well, that's not a positive experience with DEI. And it is anecdotal.
100%.
Right? And so when I saw the groundswell subsequently happen in our country, I understood it. And had an experience that could make me open to doing an episode on it, at least putting language to it so that DEI can evolve into being the very thing that it can be.
And that it should
be.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Jinx.
Jinx. Oh, you beer. What do you see? What do you see right now that chaps your ass the most? This is a segment from the podcast from the beginning that
you're stealing my mojo.
Well, you didn't ask it, so I got to ask it.
Wow.
So what you're looking for is what like really gets me going?
What bothers you the
there
most?
You go.
Yeah.
Stronzo.
Well, a stronzo, bravo. That's so good. You really are Italian. Well, at least honorary. So I will say right now, as people know and the folks that follow me, I've been accused of being anti-trans. Could not be farther from the truth. I think what irritates me most right now is the notion that because no news and no surprise to anyone, I've done this since I was 2 years old, have been voicing my frustration about women's rights, that now all of a sudden, somehow in the last few years, vocalizing that has translated into being anti-queer, anti-trans, anti-LGBT, anti-all of that, just because my focus is on women's rights. And the reason why that happens is because there are aspects of women's rights that are very delicately dancing a dance with the LGBTQ community that is not in good synchronicity right now. And questioning that and addressing that to find a reasonable solution is in the interest of everyone. And yet there's very little space. Are there spaces in the feminist community or in the women's rights communities that is equally aggressive? Sure, I will consent to that. Like there are some women and feminists that go about it in a really aggressive, unkind way. Yeah. And not just against LGBT, but against men as well, against the patriarchy and all that stuff. I don't find that productive at all. The way I address it always is I say there's a difference between activists and advocates. If you want to be an advocate, that's fine. We need activists. I was an activist when I was younger. Like we all need that fire, that passion. Activists tend to be one issue focused. They tend to be loud, angry. It's like when you first start a fire, it is strong. It is crazy and ginormous, but then it dies down very fast if you don't keep stoking it and fueling it in the right ways. An advocate listens to the activist, pays attention to what the problems of society are, and then says, how do we now work to make sure that we can actually implement the change that's needed to make sure everyone walks away supported? And the advocacy of that fire is the coals that keep burning and keep things warm and gets the job done, which is essentially being able to cook on coals and stay warm. But an actual fire is destructive if it's not tamed and kept under control and then transformed into what it's meant to be, which is a fire that gives you heat and gives you the opportunity to cook.
What great metaphor.
I love that.
And I think if I could just pull out sort of the nugget of what you're saying that chaps your ass is that you want to be able to help resolve these issues. And in doing so, people aren't listening. They're just kind of being lazy and calling you anti-trans. Mm-hmm. Is that
it's lazy thinking, generally.
Yeah. It's accusing someone of being the complete opposite of what they're actually trying to do because you felt triggered. And the word trigger is just like, I'm so
That's
done
another
with that
trigger.
word. Yeah. I'm so done. I'm triggered by the word trigger.
Yeah.
Same.
Okay, so
it's such a key thing because I think that that's part of the problem of this extremism because it's so we're so divided and we're so us versus them, and we're feeling so righteous because everyone's so much better than everybody else, and we're so afraid to even talk to the other side that it's just easier to just label. Oh, well, she's just anti. And like,
Exactly.
Which is also part of the reason why I don't trust legacy media, because it's just, it's not nuanced enough.
Well, those are the headlines.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The headlines are the accusations, and they're inflammatory, triggering, so to speak.
Very triggering. Yeah.
For more background on what brought us here, check out Sarah's page-turning memoir. It's called Scarred, The True Story of How I Escaped NXIVM, the cult that bound my life. It's available on Amazon, Audible, and at most bookstores. Highly recommend, of course, because she's my wife. And now, a brief message from our Little Bit Culty sponsors. Remember, when you support our sponsors, you support our podcast. Break time's over, people. Let's get back to this episode of A Little Bit Culty. It's a good one.
So given that, what do you want people to know? What's the takeaway from your book, and what do you wish that people knew?
So I wish that people knew, first of all, that, well, number one, none of us know everything.
Yeah.
And if we are interested and invested in being better versions of ourselves, we really have to listen way more than we speak. And, you know, the famous saying, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So it is true. We should be listening twice as much as we're speaking, and we're not doing that. Right now, I think if I boil it down to, let's say, the Middle East and women's issues, because that is pretty much my life mission, is to address these two things. If we really are invested in the Middle East and in women, we have to listen to the stories from the people who lived it. And remember that it is not a monolithic experience. Just because someone told you I am a Palestinian queer person and I don't have the right to exist, then all of a sudden you think that all of Palestinian liberation equates to queer liberation. That is not absolutely the case. Just because someone tells you Islam is the most wonderful thing that's happened to me and the greatest religion does not mean that all people, and especially women living under Islam, are feeling safe and feeling okay and feeling not oppressed. So allow these experiences to speak for themselves and do not use yourself as a mouthpiece for them. That, I think, is probably the one thing that probably really upsets me more than anything else. It's like when someone that is not connected to the story feels like now all of a sudden I want to be a good person, therefore I'm going to be an ambassador for this mission. I, of course, lean towards the Palestinian plight. In no way does that translate to I don't care for Jews at all. I absolutely feel the same pain for both the Jews and the Palestinians as people. The conversation around the government and the history is a totally different conversation that needs to be kept in a space that is not mixed with human suffering. Those, and I'm not saying we should separate them, but like you can have those arguments in separate spaces and leave with at least common agreement that all we want is for people to feel safe and good. But people are not paying attention to those details. And I've said this multiple times. When people walk around wearing the kafiyah, or we call the shmagh, or what it has, whatever different name, and they're doing that in support of Palestinians, okay, some will say that's great. Some will say, I'm happy to see that. What I say is, so are you telling me you're standing by the oppressed?
Right.
The answer is yes. Okay, great. Well, you do know that the most oppressed people in that region are women. So why are you wearing the garb that men wear? Because that is a form of upholding who tends to be in power, i.e. the oppressor of women. Why aren't you wearing a hijab? Why aren't you walking around wearing a hijab, wearing the symbol of oppression of the women there? I mean, that's a genuine question. I'm not just being an ass.
Such a great question.
You know, there's a spectrum, but like an even more oppressive patriarchal religion that they're advocating for. And when I see the kafiyah, that's what chaps my ass. It's like, do you understand what you're rooting for in terms of the extreme belief system? Not, what am I trying to say?
To me, it advertises their ignorance.
Yeah. And to be clear, I don't want civilians to be hurt, right? Like I want them to be safe. I don't want that carnage. When you get down, we could spend a whole podcast going this history and, you know, the Jews did this and the Arabs did that and blah, 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 blah. What are we looking at? Two extreme belief systems. The extremes on both sides are problematic. Don't think that people wearing the kafiyah understand that there are people who want to eradicate and are taught. Can you tell me if this is right or not? The Quran, in some interpretations, say to exterminate Jews. Is this accurate?
Yeah, it is accurate.
Okay.
I mean, I hate to say this because, again, I always stand by the Middle Eastern plight. And of course, I come from, similarly to you, we are, the people who we come from for the most part and the experiences that we've had. And of course, I've always and will probably always stand by the Palestinians, not against the Jews, but maybe the concern is obviously against Israel. And that's, a conversation in and of its own.
Things, yeah.
And by the way, and I respect all views, even if I disagree with them. But in that respect, absolutely, every year of my life in school, every opportunity there was that we were studying religious teachings, the message always was, among others, is, the Jews are the worst thing in the world. And that is taught. That is a belief system. And by the way, we can say that it's turned into a religious belief, but I know for a fact it's a political belief because the prophet, and regardless of my opinions of the religion and the prophet and all that, I'm nowhere here making anyone seem like a saint because I have my views. But the prophet had friends who were Jews, who were people lived with Jewish people. That in the supposed application of the religion, there was no hate against Jews fundamentally because they were considered, like the Christians, all members of the holy books. So they're Abrahamic religions. So there was no hate and animosity. This is all political now that this exists, but it's turned into a religious practice.
Right.
I met the first Jewish person in my life when I moved to this country. And I was extremely eager to do that because to me, that was a piece of healing. And I went to their home and it was an older couple and it was Hanukkah, and I remember sitting in their home. They were like 80 years old, this couple. She was a Holocaust survivor and asked me to help her light the menorah. And I sat there both terrified and excited and feeling guilty. Like if anyone in my culture saw me, they'd probably kill. What are you doing in the house of Jews, lighting a menorah with them? It was, but that to me was like the first step in completely deconstructing that brainwashing that was that hating of the Jews.
I just got emotional hearing about that. I grew up in a very liberal Jewish environment. And when I lived in Israel, we spent time drinking coffee with the Bedouins. We went into Arab towns and spoke to children and teenagers of our same age to figure out how we could create peace in the Middle East. Like that's my foundation, and it's just been a really fraught time.
Yeah.
It's been it's also because I feel so bound by my own, it's not the podcast. It's just like, I'm so afraid to say something wrong.
Yeah.
And I want to make it better. And I feel like there's no way to say it right.
And that's the hardest thing because you and I are literally the complete mirror examples of exactly who, you coming from your background as a Jewish person, me as an Arab, and we both want the same exact thing. We believe in the same exact thing. We feel the same exact thing. And yet who is hijacking this conversation are not people like us that have absolute say and entitlement to the story. It's being hijacked by the people that have no association and affiliation to any of this on a personal level. And they have absolutely silenced us to the point that we're kind of afraid to say, hey, this is what I want, or this is what I believe. It's been hijacked by people who have zero affiliation. And much of it has even nothing to do with Jews and Palestinians.
No, it's moral status.
It is. I was at a festival and someone was wearing a keffiyeh, and the keffiyeh was a rainbow pride keffiyeh.
What did you say? Did you say anything?
I huffed and puffed on my own, but I wasn't going to confront them. But I thought to myself, okay, that is insulting to Islam because Islam is anti this stuff. So if you are really defending this religion, you don't understand it because this religion is extremely homophobic and all of that stuff. I'm not condoning it, but I'm letting you know. Newsflash, in case you didn't know. Number two, what's that have to do with the Jews and the Arabs at all? Like, how is that in any way conflated? And again, when I say this, people get mad. They're like, one oppressed group is all oppressed groups. No, absolutely not. Because those people who are waking up every day in Israel and in Gaza, their only concern is, am I going to survive today? Are we going to have food today? They are not concerned with their gender ideology that day or what pronouns they are going by before they die. And I'm not diminishing and dismissing the struggles of LGBT people or their pronouns. That is not what I'm doing. I know that I'm going to be accused of that's what I'm doing. That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to bring perspective.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to bring perspective.
And also, ironically, isn't Israel the only place in the Middle East where LGBTQ can exist without harm?
Well, so
as a democracy?
So they say that. I have seen some documentation that even in Israel, there are limitations to their existence or to their freedoms. So I'm not going to necessarily either say that it is true or it isn't true. There's discussions that I mean, I think as a government, they have some leniency towards it. My understanding is that LGBT people won't be killed there, but I don't think that the laws of the government permit the freedoms that LGBT people actually deserve, i.e. their existence, whether with their gender identification or gay marriage, I don't think is.
So
is
they
it
won't
legal?
get stoned to death, but they might not be able to get married.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have to look into that because we don't know either.
That would be helpful.
But,
yeah.
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 All right.
And that's not, we're tangenting.
That was tangential.
It was
Is that-
tangential,
I'm
but
going to bring it back.
yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Kind of on the heels of that. When you look on social media, what's going on in Europe with the quote Islamic problem, and it's starting to happen in the United States, according to some, is that a real threat? Is it that organized? Is it the travel ban to London and Paris justified? Like, what is going on in terms of how bad that is being portrayed and how close to reality is that? And is it something you would be concerned about?
That is a really tricky question because I think that, again, from my limited knowledge, and it's limited, but it's not tiny, I think there's a conflating of two very different things. One is the religion and the religious practice and religious freedoms of people from different countries and different cultures and different backgrounds who just want to practice the religion safely. And then there is the lineage of the political piece of it, the war piece of it, the power piece of it, and the fundamentalist piece of it. Those two are really very different. There are people from Southeast Asia who are Muslim, who are fairly progressive Muslims. They're no threat to anybody. People from African countries, the migrants that we see, many of them, I would say the larger percentage are just people who happen to practice this religion, and their belief system just falls in upholding the religious values for themselves and their families. But then you have those who have that political bug, who, whether they acknowledge it as a political bug or not, it is. That is, that the whole world has to be Muslim, that we have to eradicate all the infidels. Basically the Al-Qaeda mentality.
The extreme.
The extreme. That's why it's so hard to tackle this one. Because on one hand, you cannot discriminate against all Muslims because the large, vast majority of them are just practicing a religion harmlessly. But then you do open the door to this little, I say little sarcastically, but it is a larger than we know way of implementing some very, very dangerous ideologies and physical threats and war and all that. And by the way, this is something that we see conflated in so many other aspects of extreme
Christianity
belief
on the
systems.
right.
Well, and also Christianity, Judaism, Muslim, it's a problem in every major religion. There's
Our history books are about how they used to fight. That's basically what history is.
Yeah, exactly. It always boils down to some type of war.
What's the preempt to that? Because I know in the intro that we have planned, we need to pad this with the a little bit to say we're not.
You underestimate our audience.
No, we get shit for every time. And
That's a handful of people who want to give a shit.
Yeah.
Who are doing the behavior we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Sarah. They still like you.
No, it's not about that. It's not about being liked. It's about reaching. It's about reaching and people shutting down the conversation.
Yeah.
And
you can't control that.
No, I know. But I guess the question is, how do you criticize, like you said earlier, the bad ideas without being Islamophobic?
Mm-hmm.
Don't be Islamophobic. They're going to call you that anyway. I think
Islamophobic, there's a problem with that label in and of itself,
I'm sure.
right?
Tell us.
Well, I mean, it's not an irrational fear. That's what a phobia is. These labels that we attach with phobia, whether it's Islamophobia, transphobia, homophobia, we're watering down what is actually the issue, which is discrimination, hate, violence. That's a separate issue. The phobia piece is, xenophobia is real because you can be afraid of people you don't know or you don't relate to. But when we put these very romantic sounding labels on certain things, we've lost every aspect of the plight, because we can have empathy and sympathy and kindness towards a group of people that we have no connection with, but that we believe that they have the right to be protected and safe, without literally calling anyone that is questioning parts of it or does not have the same comfort zone around it as phobic of it or as hating of it. That's the first step. So education and learning and having a curiosity around understanding some things is super important. So I would say if we stop with the phobia thing, because we don't say Jewophobia, we say anti-Semitism, which, by the way, irks me because Arabs are Semites too. So we've again used a label, rightfully so, because Jews do get a lot of hate, but we've used a label that has been very intelligently orchestrated to protect a group of people, while at the same time, that same label puts them in contrast with the very people who they share the same Semite relationship with, because Arabs and Jews are both Semites. So when you call an Arab an
know that.
anti-Semite, yeah, absolutely. When you call an Arab an anti-Semite, you're accusing him for hating Jews. Is the Arab an anti-Jew? Potentially, sure, but they can't be an anti-Semite because they're Semites themselves. So these labels are really, really important. And they've been formed for a specific reason. They've been formed so that we can continue to have agitation, animosity, and hate amongst us, when at the end of the day, you boil it down, 99% of people want the same thing, and that is to be safe, to be loved, and to be heard and seen, and as a consequence, are willing to do the same for others. But when these ideologies come into our head and they tell us it's different, and it's a problem and it's a threat, then we get amped up and hyped up. So Islamophobia, we use it because it's become the norm practice word, but the truth is it's anti-Islam, or it's Islamic hate when it's accurately applied. When it's used as a phobia, it's just a way to accuse everyone that is questioning something and fearful naturally because of the unknown. Is all, Islamophobia real, and is it all bad? No. Is there real Islamic hate? Absolutely. There's some terrible sentiments there. But some people are just coming from a place of fear. They don't know what that means. If they see someone that looks Muslim, they can be afraid. And that is wrong to fear someone that is just Muslim. But I can also say, what is happening in our society that we're not teaching people not to fear that?
Right. In fact, quite the opposite. They're teaching them to fear that.
Exactly.
And we could do a whole separate episode on the problems and the truth of, and because it's not black or white, it's nuanced, with the term anti-Semitism.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And there's history to why. And me saying this does not minimize the fact that anti-Semitism in its now notion recognition doesn't exist. It exists and it's very real. I'm just saying it's so curious to see where these labels come from.
Yeah.
Right.
And especially in a current woke culture where we're deconstructing every part of our verbiage because it's associated or attached to something racist or something ist of some other sort. This is one that we have not addressed, among others, obviously, but this one particularly. And it's being used both to hurt the Jews, but also to
protect,
to harm, to protect. Exactly.
Yeah. It's
Well,
not
language was my big one when we got out, and we do a whole chapter on it in our book. But language was the one. Every time I saw it, I was like, Sarah, look at what they're doing to the language. They're like,
we're very sensitive to that.
They're telling you what to say and think.
And I just realized that this episode, part 2, is rounding over an hour. So let's, we'll just have to get together again soon. Yeah. Let's end on a light note. Was there anything that we didn't cover that you feel is pressing?
No,
we covered a lot.
Great.
We covered a lot. It was so interesting.
Thank you, Jasmin.
But on a light note, our new thing we've been asking our guests recently who grew up in oppressive religions or culture groups or whatever is, what guilty pleasure do you do now that you weren't allowed to do growing up that you get to relish in?
Whoa, that's good. I think everything I do in my life is considered a guilty pleasure. I mean, keep in mind, I came from a culture where a lot of what I do is not okay. Just walking out unveiled, talking to men in a normal way, not having to pray 5 times a day and being bound by that schedule. Maybe eating prosciutto, which was a guilty pleasure even growing up because you're not supposed to eat pork, but I still did it even as a kid that was supposedly being raised Muslim because I'm half Italian. Yeah, I would say anything that you can think of that is something that a woman does in her normal everyday life is definitely a guilty pleasure. And that says a lot. I think that really says a lot in the context of things. But I would say really just walking my dog to the park unveiled is probably the sweetest and most delicious guilty pleasure of all.
I love that.
And it's funny because oftentimes some of the accusations that come then from the folks who are very fundamentally still ingrained in that ideology, who are very offended by my choices, will say, well, all you wanted is to go and get naked in, and I'm like, really? That's what I wanted, was to go and get
one
naked?
clown, huh?
Yeah, but it's always associated to something sexual or something. It's like, because that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to get away from all of that to get naked. And I don't think I've ever been naked in public. In fact, if I have, I was probably unaware. And by the way, I also have no interest and leanings towards any kind of inebriation either. So I know I haven't done that under the influence because I don't have a tendency or interest in being under the influence. Another of the many things that people like me get accused of. So my guilty pleasure is walking my dog to the park. How exciting is that?
I love it. Thank you so much for your time. This has just been an absolute delight. Where can people find you?
Yes. So my website is www. I don't even know we say that anymore, but jasminfaulk.com. Super simple. My name. And then I'm most active, I would say, on Instagram, and it's jasmin.faulk. And then I do have a YouTube channel that is working to get a little more active. I am on LinkedIn. Obviously, that's more kind of the work world. But yeah, and email. And I'm always happy to engage and communicate with folks.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. You are a delight and so articulate. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you both. Thank you and thank you so much for the work that you do. And thank you for being so thoughtful with the work that you do.
Thank you, Jasmin.
Thanks, Jasmin.
Do you like what you hear on A Little Bit Culty? Then please do give us a rating, a review, and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Or even better, share this episode with someone who you think needs to hear it. Maybe they're in a cult. Maybe they're a little bit susceptible. Just share the love. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Jasmin. This episode kind of inspired a quotation I like by Václav Havel. Ideology is a misleading way of relating to the world. It offers human beings the illusion of an identity, of dignity, and of a morality while making it easier for them to part with them. I think that couples a lot of what we talk about.
Jasmin, we have so much respect for your advocacy and the voice you lend to women who are not allowed to speak for themselves. We appreciate the powerful nuance and the thoughtfulness that you bring to these incredibly fraught and divisive topics.
We'll drop a link to Jasmin's memoir in the show notes in case any of you want to learn more about her story. Until then, stay safe, and we'll see you next time on ALBC.
Bye for now.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean. I'm hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production, executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames, in collaboration with Amphibian Media. Our co-creator is Jess Temple-Tardy, audio engineering by Red Cayman Studios, and our writing and research is done by Emma Deal and Kristen Reeder. Our theme song, Cultivated, is by the artists John Bryant and Nigel Aslin.